Does learning has any bound? No, not at all. Learning knows no bound. That is what is about inclusive education. In this module, we are going to discuss about the concept, meaning, and evolution of inclusive education, principles, process, and benefits of inclusive education, and the challenges in inclusive education with respect to physical, sensory, cognitive, and socio emotional challenges. All children can learn, irrespective of their ability and disability. Now, we will discuss about the concept, meaning, and evolution of inclusive education. What is inclusion? Just think about this word in your mind. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear or see the word inclusion? Inclusion, like the answer which you give will be including everything. Education setup, or are all people equally valued? Who is valuable in the school? Now, just we will try to understand what is meant by inclusion. I think these two questions would have provoked your understanding about inclusion, and definitely you will begin to think about what might be inclusion then. Inclusion is providing quality access, equity, educational support, instructional support, responsiveness, and communication support to all the individuals or students who are enrolled in a mainstream school. So, inclusion is all about mainstreaming education by removing the barriers which come across in the learning process. Children with disabilities are provided quality education in regular school with their age and grade peers with the support services which are required by them, and all those things are made available in the school system itself. The child need not go outside or wait for any service to reach to him. Inclusion is providing a quality learning environment which is accessible for a child with disability. That is what does inclusion mean. Here, inclusion means the child has certain limitations. We cannot change that limitation, or we cannot cure that limitation. Here, the child will not change at all. The system has to change, material has to change, method has to change, strategy has to change. Everything will change in inclusive schools. That is what does inclusion mean. And this picture gives a clear idea about inclusive education. See, children with and without disabilities are equally participating in all the activities conducted by the school. That is what is depicted in this picture. They are participating in the prayer, they go to canteen, they play sports, they use the transportation like any other child, and they attend class like any other child. Indoor game, outdoor game, everything they participate on par with other children. That is what does inclusive education mean. Now, let us understand the principles, process, and benefits of inclusive education. Principles of inclusive education are access, equity, relevance, participation, and empowerment. Access means access to the learning environment and the education system. The access may be either physical access or the psychological access or learning access. Whatever it may be, the child should have access to the learning environment because the physical infrastructure has to be modified. The learning environmental barrier has to be made accessible. Teaching material has to be made accessible, and moreover, method of teaching should also be made accessible for the child to attend the classroom. Equity is he should be treated on par with other children in the class. He should not miss even a single event just because the child is disabled. If assessment is done, the child should also undergo assessment. Maybe alternative assessment methodologies can be used. Classes going on, the child should have all the access and equity to attend the classroom with all the support services. And the next comes relevance. The method, material, and the strategies which are used in the classroom and the learning environment should be relevant to the child. Without relevance, learning is meaningless for the child. So, that should be taken care of. Next principle is participation. The child should be allowed to participate in all the activities which takes place in the environment, that is the learning environment. Whatever may be the class, the child should also be made to participate, and he or she should not be left alone in the classroom activities. And final principle is empowerment. Definitely the child gets appropriate access, treated with equity, provided with relevance, and given opportunity to participate, he will achieve the empowerment, which is the ultimate aim of inclusive education. The principles of inclusive education is further listed as increased participation of the learners, reducing exclusion. That is, we are including children with disability also in the mainstream education. Flexible curriculum, which is appropriate for a child with disability, which he or she can access to. Then inclusive school culture should be practiced from all levels and by all the stakeholders of the school system. Then policies and practice should promote inclusion. The recent policy which is enacted in the recent 5 years is Right for Persons with Disabilities Act 2016, which clearly lays the rules, regulations, and framework for promoting inclusion of children with disabilities in the general school. And this slide further explains the principles of inclusive education. Providing access and participation, that is, all students have the right to enroll, access, and participate in schooling which meets their individual needs. The second is their diversity is valued. All levels of the system should value diversity and operate within an inclusive framework. Here we have to address to the diversity also, because we all know that they have limitation. It is not their fault. It is the fault of the disability. Because of the disability only, they undergo all these limitations and restrictions in learning. Then third one is ensuring local decisions and adjustments. A range of effective and appropriate adjustment is provided to ensure access, participation and achievement. That is, the accessibility differs from place to place, and whatever is relevant to the school which the child is attending to should be attended to. Then fourth one is implementing a new framework for resource allocation. Adjustments are provided on a need basis and are equitably resourced. Fifth one is matching pedagogy with students' needs. The students support the development of pedagogy to meet the individual student needs. That is, methods, material, everything should be planned according to meet the need and demand of a child with disability in the classroom. Sixth is delivering responsive programs and services. A range of coordinating programs and services which are flexible and aiming at the holistic development of the child, meeting to their needs, should be provided so that the child can be benefited out of the inclusive education. Seventh one is collaborating for better outcomes. Services are provided and support by collaborative models and partnership. So, wherever the services are not available, then the prospective area of availing the services has to be pointed out or found out, and that has to be channelized so that the child can be benefited out of that collaboration. The process of inclusion includes three areas, that is acceptance, understanding, and attending. Acceptance is accepting the child as he or she is with all the limitations, because limitations is because of the disability, not because of the child. So, acceptance is the first step in inclusion. Next step is understanding about the disability, their individual specific needs because of this disability, and third one is attending to the needs. Once if the needs are clearly understood, naturally how to overcome that hurdles can be channelized and sorted out. So the process of inclusion includes acceptance of disability, understanding the characteristics and need of disability, and attending to it. So successful inclusive education happens through acceptance, understanding, and attending the students' differences and diversity. It may include physical, cognitive, academic, social, and emotional. Benefits of inclusion. The following are the benefits of inclusion: understanding diversity and valuing the difference in a child. Second one is improving self-esteem and positive identity of all, including children with disability. Then fulfillment of each and every individual's potential. Why? Because we all have individual differences, and a group of 40 people cannot be treated as homogeneous. Individual difference exists there, and each one has different potential. That potential has to be attended to. And full participation of all groups in all the activities planned in the school. Benefits are extended to social interaction, social competence and communication skills, improved skill acquisition and academic gains, social acceptance, and life skill acquisition. These are the additional benefits which are acquired from inclusive education. You just think, if we are left alone in a group, how we will feel? The same will be the feeling of a person with disability. If he is recognized and his need is recognized, and he automatically develops social competence and will try to develop his communication, and because of his peer influence and peer modeling, the skills of the child will also be enriched, and academic gains also we can see, which will lead to social acceptance and life skill acquisition. Challenges in inclusive education. Challenges in inclusive education are physical challenge. If the physical infrastructure or the environment is not accessible, naturally child with disability will have difficulty in attending to it. Suppose a person with wheelchair is not accessible to the classroom just because he is not able to climb the stairs, then there arises the challenges that can be overcome through ramps or setting up of a classroom in the downstairs or the ground floor. Next comes the sensory challenge. We all know that learning in a classroom happens through senses. Predominantly auditory sense and the visual sense plays a key role in the classroom learning. children with sensory impairments as well, the children with neurodevelopmental disabilities will have a tendency of attending to one particular sense. But if we keep on insisting upon one particular mode, the other children will not be benefited out of the classroom learning. So this challenge can be overcome by providing visual method of teaching, auditory mode of instruction, as well kinesthetic mode of delivering the content. That is, the child should be made to see, hear, and involved in doing the things, so that depending on his learning style he can acquire the concept in the inclusive education classroom. Next comes cognitive challenge. All children with disability will not have same cognitive functioning. So few children may be very slow in learning. So the inclusive education system instructions should address to their cognitive needs also. Next comes socio-emotional challenges. Children without disability also, normally we happen to say or see very often that they develop this socio-emotional challenges because of their peer group non-acceptance or need of recognition, attention, etc. Just think about these children. Definitely, they also will have socio-emotional challenges because of their isolation or segregation or treating them differently by others. Hence, these are the main challenges which are faced by inclusive education or by the students who are undergoing the inclusive education. That is to sum up: physical, sensory, cognitive, and socio-emotional challenge. Just have a look at the picture. This is a real example of an inclusive classroom. How seating is arranged, overcoming the challenge of physical physical infrastructure or whatever it may be. See the lab, how space is being rearranged to adapt or to accommodate a student with a disability. Play area, everything. It is in our hands to create an inclusive classroom. It is more than developing a positive attitude towards these children with disability. Barriers to inclusive education. The main barrier is, and foremost barrier is, attitudinal barrier. Attitudinal barrier of the person with disability, himself or herself, parent, teachers, school authorities, or educational authorities. How I will learn when I go and sit with other people? What they will think of me? Will they look down upon me? From the parent's viewpoint, how my child will be able to adjust in that inclusive classroom? He has different needs. Will all that needs be addressed in the inclusive classroom? From the teacher's perspective, I have not learned to teach a child with disability. How will I be able to handle this particular child along with a group of 30 or 40 students? Then, school administrative authorities. Will the child be able to learn like any other child? What will happen to the name and fame of my institution? All these attitudinal barriers has to be challenged, and that has to be overcome by making them to realize that these people with disability also have the same right to enjoy as we enjoy the education. Next comes the physical barrier, which we have already discussed. The physical infrastructure, that is the classroom, locality of the classroom, as well as the arrangement of the classroom, that many a times happen to be the barriers to inclusive education. Then pedagogical barrier, that is competency of the teacher and the learning materials, which we have discussed earlier. That is, if a teacher is not trained to handle a child with a disability, then how effectively he or she can provide instruction to that child? There comes a question mark, like how this has to be addressed. So this teacher competency has to be overcome by providing basic training to these teacher educators. Maybe after a appointment they can get in service training, and in pre-service teacher education program also. Nowadays it has become mandatory that they have to study about inclusive education and understand about the differential needs of children with varied disabilities. So the teacher competency to handle these children becomes one of the uh, most important barrier. Learning materials to suit children with disabilities. Usually a teacher of a general education classroom will go with the standard or a prescribed learning material, which will be presented, and more or less the children will attend to it, but that will not help a child with a disability because of his limitations in various areas. So learning material again becomes a barrier. Then instructional barrier, curriculum and assistive technology. Curriculum, like in an inclusive classroom, curriculum is common, and a child with a disability should also undergo the same curriculum like any other children, which is not possible. A child with intellectual disability cannot fully undergo the curriculum content because of his limited intellectual functioning. Similarly, it happens with children with hearing impairment and children with the other neurodevelopmental disabilities. Hence, curriculum adaptation is very much needed, and that becomes a barrier. Assistive technology, making use of assistive technology like recognizable pen or artificial intelligence impaired impacted writing materials, audio materials, alternative assessment. These are not permittable in our education system, and that becomes a barrier. And societal barrier, why to accept these children in inclusive education classroom? If all these barriers are overcome only, then inclusive education system will become a successful one. And to quote, nowadays many of these barriers are being overcome, and steps are taken by the government as well as the school authorities to overcome all these barriers, and steps are being initiated through various means to overcome all these barriers. See the major barriers. This picture will give you a very clear idea. We have schools, we have job, we have opportunity, and we said that we usually say that society is for all, full participation, everything we used to say in words. See how that child is struggling to reach there. Lack of rehabilitation and equipment, he has physical barrier, he has attitudinal barrier, he has to cross everything to reach the society for all. Barriers are social attitude, lack of awareness about children with disability, scarcity of trained teachers and proper learning materials, absence of barrier-free environment, resistance of parents to admit, both the parents, children with disability and without disability. Why to enroll my child in the school where my child is not accepted? Why should I enroll my child along with a child with a disability? Both exist. Improper curriculum adaptation, school environment and attitude, support services, insufficient and improper pre-service teacher education, which we have discussed earlier itself, ICT availability and related competencies of the teacher to make use of the ICT competency. So see, all these barriers come in line to stop the child with disability to participate effectively in inclusive education system. And as a teacher and as an educationist, we have to formulate strategies to make the school spaces inclusive. How that can be made inclusive? By overcoming attitudinal barrier, physical barrier, and instructional barrier. Instructional barrier includes curriculum, teaching material, and teacher competency. Then, to ensure that all children are able to participate and learn within a classroom without isolating or segregating one or a group of students in the classroom. So, here we have to adapt methodologies and strategies to suit all children with different learning style in the classroom. To involve community resources for enriching the spirit of inclusion in the schools. See, all the resources may not be available in the school itself. There, effort should be made by the school to make use of the community resources which are available nearby and which comes in handy for the benefit of children in the school. So, if these strategies are formulated, definitely in future we can develop and we can create a very good inclusive education system wherein children with disabilities, all categories of disabilities will be benefited.